Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. So Anthony Joshua has said he's been in contact with Wladimir Klitschko about 4 weeks ago about the Kubrat Pulev fight. This is what he had to say. We spoke about the Kubrat Pulev fight. This was like 4 weeks ago, and I'm probably going to catch up with him again now that you've just mentioned it. He has his views, but every fighter, so Kubrat Pulev versus Klitschko is different to Pulev versus Joshua. Pulev versus Klitschko was a different fight to Klitschko versus Joshua. They're completely different fights. So even though Klitschko has been in there with both of us, the fights were so different. So even though Klitschko is going to be able to give me advice how to deal with Kubrat Pulev, I have to take it with a pinch of salt, because the Pulev I'm going to be fighting is completely different from the Pulev that Klitschko was fighting. So there we go, that is what Anthony Joshua has had to say. And he didn't go as far as saying what Klitschko actually told him and what advice was given. He just said that he has to take it with a pinch of salt and approach this fight in his own way. So I'm guessing what Klitschko has told him is something similar to what he done, considering the words from Anthony Joshua saying that he has to approach this fight completely different to how Klitschko approached this fight, and completely different to how he approached fighting Klitschko himself. So there are going to be different things that Anthony Joshua does, because he's not the same fighter as Klitschko. There are some similarities that you can draw between the two of them, but again, they are different fighters. Anthony Joshua is more of a front foot fighter, more explosive, lands more punches in bunches, probably has the better combinations as well. So AJ has that, but Klitschko has a very good left hook, and that is what caused Kubrat Pulev problems in their fight. So does Anthony Joshua then try and land a lead left hook? No, not necessarily, because maybe that is not Anthony Joshua's money punch. Maybe Anthony Joshua's money punch is an uppercut and a hook, a combination. So if he can implement that, then he can win in a different fashion to what Klitschko did. So he doesn't need to do the same as Klitschko, but there are still certain weaknesses that he can exploit in the Kubrat Pulev. They are there in every single fighter. The trick is finding them and exploiting those weaknesses, because Anthony Joshua has learned it's not just about focusing on what he does, but taking things away from his opponent. He will do that against Kubrat Pulev, because styles do make fights. Anthony Joshua is right. Pulev versus Joshua is going to be different from Klitschko versus Pulev, or Joshua versus Klitschko. They are completely different fights, just as Andy Ruiz versus Joshua is different from Anthony Joshua versus Kubrat Pulev, because that has been a comparison drawn by particularly Kubrat Pulev's team, especially Bob Arum, his promoter, that if Ruiz can do it, then therefore Kubrat Pulev can. That's not necessarily the case, because they are two different fighters with two completely different styles. Same with Joshua and Klitschko, two different fighters with maybe similarities but still different styles. So the problems that Klitschko caused Pulev, maybe Anthony Joshua can't cause those same problems, but he can cause different problems and exploit different weaknesses in Kubrat Pulev, like making Pulev surrender his positioning. If he is able to do that, because Pulev very rarely does, but if he is able to do that, then he can get him off balance and land punches. When he does that, that puts more power in the shots that Anthony Joshua is landing, therefore causing more of an effect. And we've seen how Kubrat Pulev deals with heavy, powerful shots when he was in there with Klitschko. He did not deal with it all that well, but one thing that you can say for Kubrat Pulev is he kept getting up. He got off the deck 3 or 4 times, maybe even 5 times, so he has an immense amount of heart. So he won't quit in this fight with Anthony Joshua. For as long as he can, he will be standing there trading leather with Anthony Joshua, and that will be very interesting and make for a good fight with AJ, because you have to wonder if whether this is the last chance for Kubrat Pulev, the last world title opportunity. He failed the first time. He's not going to want to fail again. So that makes him essentially more dangerous this time than he was when he was in there with Klitschko, because in that Klitschko fight he's shown a clear lack of experience, but those experiences that he suffered from in the Klitschko fight he can take and use in there with AJ. So yes, last time around there was a certain amount of inexperience and rawness to Kubrat Pulev, not necessarily in his boxing, because he is an accomplished amateur and pro as well. It wasn't that necessarily, it was inexperience at the level. Being macho, trying to stand there in the centre of the ring, he stood on one foot and looked at Klitschko in the eyes, stuck his tongue out when he got hurt. You don't do that when you're in that position with a champion who is as dangerous as a Klitschko, but Pulev done it nonetheless. So he let his emotions get the better of him. He wanted to hurt Klitschko back when he was hurt, when probably the best thing to do would have been to hold or buy time, but he didn't do that. So there are certain lessons that he learnt in that Klitschko fight that will serve him well going in there with Anthony Joshua in his second world title opportunity. And I think that when Anthony Joshua says he's taking what Klitschko says with a pinch of salt, I don't think that means that he's not taking the advice. I think that he's looking at it from a different perspective. So Anthony Joshua has to look at that and understand that Pulev this time is different to what he was against Klitschko. The mentality is different, which potentially could be more dangerous, because Anthony Joshua has said following the Andy Ruiz Jr. fight, he is focused not only on training his physique and body to prepare for these fights, but also his mental state. He needs to be mentally right to go in the ring. His opponent will be doing the same. Anthony Joshua must expect a mentally tough Kubrat Pulev, because even in that fight with Klitschko, he was dropped multiple times, stopped in the 5th round, barely won a moment in the fight, still landed some punches though. He did have his moments, but in that fight he did come apart. So there are certain things that Pulev will look at, and he will break that down and use those to make himself better going forwards. There are always going to be weaknesses in Anthony Joshua, in Pulev, in Tyson Fury, in Deontay Wilder, in Dillian White. Everyone has their certain weaknesses. It is just down to how the fighter deals with them, because that is what takes the mental strength. When a fighter gets hurt, how do they deal with it? Pulev has shown how he dealt with it in the Klitschko fight, so therefore that mental strength needs to be improved from him to show his resolve, to be able to stick in there and make adjustments when he needs to. There are always going to be question marks, and as I said, it's just how the fighter deals with them. How does the fighter overcome those certain things, the dilemmas in the ring? Because there is always one particular fighter, or maybe more than one, especially when you face top opponents, especially like Anthony Joshua does, back to back. There are always going to be opponents that ask questions, and fighters like Anthony Joshua, like Tyson Fury, it is their job to answer them, even if they are struggling in there, to show their mental resolve just as much as their physical advantages and abilities that they have over their opponent. Again, meaning that it's not just about focusing on what, say, Anthony Joshua does well, it's about focusing on what Kubrat Pulev does well and taking those things away. So thus not allowing Kubrat Pulev to exploit maybe certain weaknesses that he believes are there in Anthony Joshua. If Pulev believes there are weaknesses that he can exploit, Anthony Joshua needs to take those tools away from Pulev to prevent him from exploiting those weaknesses. Now, I'm not saying that Kubrat Pulev can, or there are weaknesses that particularly Kubrat Pulev can exploit, but it's just the fact that Anthony Joshua needs to prevent them. That is called making the adjustments, especially at this level. He's proven he can do it, so if he is able to adjust in fights, then he is able to overcome those certain things. Anthony Joshua has proven he is able to do that. Kubrat Pulev must prove he is able to do that if he wants to get anything out of this fight with AJ on December 12th. Guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new. Thanks guys.